Hello my dear friends, you're in the middle of the summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and during the next video we're going to talk about this area, the area between Africa, Middle East, India and Asia. Because it seems that Indian Ocean is about to be completely encircled by different states. Now let's start, and first let's talk about Ukraine. We have lots of very interesting updates. According to information we have during the previous night, once again both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other with hundreds of drones. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine stated that Russians used 133 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. We have lots of videos on this matter, and according to pro-Russian sources, overnight the Ukrainians used 97 drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, and the Russians are saying that they managed to bring down almost everything. When talking about Ukrainian side, about their attack, we haven't received almost anything this morning and overnight about the consequences of attacks. But as for the Russian side, as for the Russian attack during the previous night, we received lots of updates as usually. According to information, we have lots of explosions were recorded on the territory of the city of Odessa, and we have this morning lots of updates on this matter. We have lots of satellite pictures where we can see the comparison of the previous strikes. So these are the changes between the dates on different objects of infrastructure. Furthermore, we had reports that explosions were recorded in the area of the city of Kryvyi Rog, consequences of ground strikes in Krasnopolsky. A critical infrastructure object has been hit. Here we can see the consequences of attack, black smoke over this object of probably energy infrastructure. So the city of Kryvyi Rog is a very important city for the Ukrainian logistics. Another update is coming from the city of Dnipro. Here we can see the consequences of attack that took place right after the end of the Easter Truth. As we can see, another oil refinery or another oil depot was significantly damaged as a result of attack. As for the previous night, lots of explosions, lots of attacks were recorded as usually these days in the northern parts of Ukraine. We're talking about Chernihiv and Sumy regions. Very interesting video we received from the area of the northern parts of Chernihiv region, and the value of this video is that the Russians once again demonstrated the use of Geraint drones of the next generations. In this video we can see a mobile group, air defense mobile group of the armed forces of Ukraine that was defending or protecting an object of energy infrastructure in this region. The Russians most likely at the beginning were planning to destroy an object of energy infrastructure, but then they discovered this mobile air defense group and they attacked this object, and this mobile group was completely destroyed. So we need to see probably the energy infrastructure to understand what happened there. So as you can see, right exactly in the area of this strike, we can see lots of lines, which means that these are energy lines, and this is a substation in the area of the settlement of Khmelnytsia, and the Ukrainian mobile air defense group was located right exactly at this point. The Russians most likely at the beginning, and the original plan from the Russian side was to attack this substation, but during the flights the operator of a Geraint drone managed to discover this mobile air defense group, and the Russians decided to change their course and to attack this object. So this is approximately what happened in this area overnight. Few more explosions were recorded on the territory of the settlement of Shostka. We have this video where we can see an explosion that took place almost in the central part of the city. And the most important thing that I would like to point to attention, probably 10 days before the 14th of April of 2026, we start receiving lots of updates, lots of videos exactly from the northern parts of Ukraine. So this is the picture of the northern parts of Ukraine, and as you can see, every single 10-20 kilometers were under a heavy attack from the Russian side using drones and missiles and probably even aviation and so on. And we pointed this attention when we just discovered the situation, because it was very interesting and pretty strange what exactly the Russians were doing there and what exactly the Russians were planning. And it seems that today we received an answer to this question, because according to information we have, the Russians began something in the Sumy direction, and as you can see, we have lots of changes on the ground. So this is the situation by the end of the 12th of April, and this is the situation by the morning of the 14th of April. It seems that there are very heavy clashes along the border to the east of the city of Sumy, and it seems that the Russians maybe even began the Sumy offensive operation. So let's discuss everything in details, and first let's talk about the northern Sumy area. During the previous night, we received this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of this big forest. We started adjusting this map in this area probably 4 days ago or something like this. This is the end of the 10th of April of 2026. This is 11th of April, and this is already the end of the 30th of April, and this is the beginning of the 14th of April of 2026. So according to these updates, the Russians began advancing in this area, and we added a gray zone, a big gray zone in this area. But today during the night we received the video that confirms that indeed the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, entered this big forest, and the Russians continue their offensive operation further in the southern direction. So this is the first direction of the Sumy, of a major Sumy offensive operation that is currently taking place. The eastern direction, as you can see, we have lots of icons, and this morning pro-Ukrainian sources published their latest updates on this matter. So this is the map that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to this map, almost the entire territory along the border between the settlements of Miropolye and Ryasne was colored either under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation or as a gray zone. So these are the biggest changes from pro-Ukrainian sources probably since the beginning of 2025 or something like this. So let's compare the map once again between the dates. This is the end of the 30th of April, and this is the beginning of the 14th of April. But the most important thing, that these changes are not the only changes that have taken place since the beginning of April, because if you remember, just a few days ago we were talking about the settlement of Miropolye, when the Russians stated that they managed to capture this village, and probably this is exactly the moment when everything started. So according to the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that was published on the 9th of April of 2026, the Russians began their Sumy offensive operation right exactly somewhere around these dates, between 1st and the 9th of April of 2026. So by the end of the 10th of April, the Russians captured the settlement of Miropolye. By the end of the 11th of April, the Russians improved their positions around this village according to different mappers, and the Russians entered the eastern part of the settlement of Novodmitrivka, and the Russians began assault operation in this area. As for the village of Novodmitrivka, this is already a pretty big village, as you can see, surrounded by a huge forest. By the end of the 12th of April of 2026, we received the report that Russians continue the offensive operation around the settlement of Miropolye, and Russians improved their positions. As of the end of the 30th of April, we received the report that the Russians indeed managed to cut the pocket to the east of the settlement of Miropolye, and these are the changes on the ground. And today we received the biggest updates since the beginning of April. The Russians managed to improve their positions significantly along the entire line of combat contact, and the current length of the front line, according to just raw estimation, is more than or around 50 kilometers. So this is the biggest front line, one of the biggest front line, and the Russians will continue offensive operation, because this information about these changes were recorded and were updated not just by pro-Ukrainian sources, not just by mappers, but also lots of military experts stated that the situation in and around Sumy is drastically deteriorating. So the Ukrainians confirmed that something is happening in this area. Of course, we need to wait, but either this is indeed the major Russian spring-summer offensive operation of 2026, or it's just another attempt to distract the Ukraine's attention from a primary direction, which is going to take place somewhere else. Now let's move further. And before we start discussion on other front lines, I would like to probably move to the Odessa region, to the area of the Black Sea. During the previous night, we received lots of very interesting articles, so let's discuss them. First of all, according to information we have, the Russians attacked the Lady Mary's vessel in the area of the Black Sea while en route to the port of Chernomorsk in the Odessa region to load Iranian corn. So this is another attack carried out by Russians since the beginning of this year. Probably 2, 3, or 4 vessels from Ukrainian side were damaged. It seems that the Russians began testing their new approach, trying to block the Odessa infrastructure completely without any chances for Ukrainian side to receive anything from the world. Another video took place in the area of Chernomorsk from the side of Crimea. Here we can see a drone of the armed forces of Ukraine that was moving towards Crimea, and the vessel and this drone was attacked by Russians. And the most interesting article is coming from the area of the city of Sevastopol. This is not something that is related to the situation that is currently taking place. This is the video of the 10th of April of 2022, when the last time the cruiser Moscow left from Sevastopol Bay towards Snake Island. This video was made on the 10th of April. Here we can see the Moscow cruiser that later, just several days later, was destroyed in the area of the Snake Islands when Ukrainians attacked this cruiser with 2 Ukrainian anti-ship missiles from the Neptune complex. And this cruiser was destroyed, and that was the beginning of complete collapse of the superiority over the Black Sea from the Russian side. Now we are on the probably at the beginning of 2026. The Russians in 2022 were able to control this part of the Black Sea without any chances for Ukrainian side to use this territory. And now, according to information we have, at the beginning of 2026, the only territory of the Black Sea that the Russians are able to control is the territory along the shore, along the Krasnodar Krai. So these are the changes, and we see that since the beginning of 2022, the Russians basically haven't made anything to change the situation, to fix the situation. We see that Ukrainians have complete dominance in the drones over the Black Sea, and we see that the Russians still haven't shown anything similar to the drones that were created by the Ukrainians with the help of the Western countries. So which means that the most important thing, that the battle for the Black Sea superiority is still ahead of us. Now let's move further. Let's discuss a few more important updates. Let's go along the line of combat contact. We have changes. Now let's talk about the Liman direction. During the previous night, we adjusted the map. We have a video published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see how Russians were attacking a tree line, which most likely was under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. And this tree line was geolocated. This is exactly the place that was attacked by Russians, and we have adjusted the map. Maybe even this stronghold is also under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. So we see that the Russians are still very far to establish complete control over the city of Liman, and there are still positions in the fields outside of the city under control of the armed forces of Ukraine. The city of Konstantinovka, small changes were recorded in the southern part. These are the changes on the ground between the date. The Ukrainians were attacking Russians outside of the settlement of Bereztok, which means that the Russians managed to secure the village of Bereztok and to improve their positions further in the northeastern direction along the N20 road. So based on these 2 videos, we have adjusted the map in this area. The Russians continue bombing the settlement of Konstantinovka with aviation. Here we can see the settlement of Vozdizhevka from the Zaporozhye direction. Lots of explosions took place in the central part. This is the city of Konstantinovka, the temporary deployment point of the 100th Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and this is the city of Kherson that was also attacked by Russians. So the Russians intensified the use of aviation, and more strikes are coming, obviously. So we have covered most of the updates regarding the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. We see that the Russians, after the end of the Easter truce and the first first quarter of the 2026 intensified their activities significantly along the entire line of combat contact, using all means they have: aviation, FPV drones, infantry forces, and so on, without changes in the Black Sea yet. And as we discussed, the next 2-3 weeks will be very heavy, and we will see lots of updates and lots of changes on the ground, especially and most likely in the Sumy direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Middle East, where the President of the United States of America continue just the mental blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous days, the President of the United States of America stated that the United States are going to block the Strait of Hormuz completely, and they will not give any permission to any tanker or vessel that take oil from the Iranian port and that moves through the Strait of Hormuz and through the Gulf of Oman. But basically nothing of this happens. Right after the beginning of the blockade, the President of the United States of America stated that we are not going to escalate the situation, we will be here, and it's going to be just the first step from our side. So some experts stated that as of now, the United States of America still don't have possibilities to block the Strait of Hormuz completely. And even if this is going to happen, not earlier than in several weeks. The thing is that, according to information we have, the United States of America brought several days ago a new aircraft strike carrier group in this region, but this strike group came to enter the Mediterranean Sea. Here we have the US Gerald Ford carrier located on low quality satellite photos, and we had the report that now the United States of America needs to redeploy their tanker George Bush through Africa. So not through the Suez Canal, not through the Manbab Strait, but through Africa, which means that the United States of America will spend probably weeks before they are able to cross all these oceans, all these seas, and enter the territory to the south of Iran. It will take a lot of time before the United States of America finish this redeployment, so that is why before 3 airstrike carrier groups enter this territory, we won't see any activities from the US side. Another important thing that was published today is that the United States of America signed a very interesting agreement with Singapore. According to information we have, US announces a defense partnership with Indonesia. So this is a very important statement that was made by the US authorities. The thing is that the state of Indonesia is located around the South China Sea. So this is the state of Indonesia, this is it, and this is the state of Malaysia, and now we need to understand that there is a very interesting situation, and there is a Strait of Singapore which goes exactly through this area. So this is the Strait of Singapore, probably this is the title of this area, and as you can see, this is the only road, the only probably not like successful, the only good road for trades between states. Let's say if China wants to get oil from the Middle East, the tankers, the vessels should go through the Strait of Singapore, right, exactly through this area. So which means that when talking about the situation now, we see that the Iranians currently control the Strait of Hormuz, and despite the statements that were made by the President of the United States of America, the coalition haven't managed to unblock the strait. Another strait is the Strait of Mandeb, is under complete control, at least 5 control of Houthis from the southwestern part of Yemen, which means that if we summarize everything, 2 the most important straits are under complete control either of the Iranians themselves or under the control of the Iranians' closest allies. Now the United States of America signed a security and military agreement with Indonesia, which means that the United States of America are trying to establish physical control control, eye control, or visible control, media control over the Strait. And if everything goes wrong, the United States of America wants to be on the safe side, and they want to be in the situation when they will be able to affect the situation in this area, and even to block the Strait if, for example, the states like China or any other states don't want to participate in the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Mandeb. And another important thing that we discussed several days ago, that the Russian Federation currently is building lots of bases on the territory of Madagascar. I would like to remind you that several days ago there was a military coup, and right after this military coup took place, the Russians intensified their work, their connections with the new Madagascar authorities. The Russians are building bases, which means that the Russians are trying to establish complete control, physical control over the Mozambique Channel. So now we see that the territory of the Indian Ocean is surrounded by global states, by global powers. The Russians from the southwest, the United States of America from the east, and the Iranian side from the northwest. Basically, if you enter this territory, you will have to, if you want to move further, you will have to move through one of these territories, either from the pro-Iranian territories, either through the pro-US territories, or through the territories that is about to be under complete Russian control. So, which means that in coming years, most likely not the weeks, months, but in coming years, the oil prices from this area will suffer huge problems, and the trade with oil will suffer problems as well, because we see that these territories are under complete control of the state who doesn't have oil from this territory, or who are under sanctions. So, which means that these parties, these states, are trying to change the game and to change the rules of these territories. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next. And meanwhile, the Israelis continue their buffer zone creation operation in the southern parts of Lebanon, and during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. This is the situation by the end of the 12th of April, this is the 30th of April, and this is the beginning of the 14th of April of 2026. The settlement of Bin Jbail was encircled by the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, and the settlement of Ramesh also was encircled. So at least two cauldrons were created, and in coming days the Israeli Defense Forces most likely would be completely concentrated to finish the battle for these territories. Then they will finish regrouping, and they will keep advancing further in the northwestern direction with the purpose to get the river of Litani. So we seem that as of now nobody is able to stop the Israeli Defense Forces, and they're keeping advancing further, at least when talking about military means. But today we received another very important statement, this time made by the president of Turkey, Erdogan. He stated that they must be strong to prevent Israel from doing the same to different states and regions in this area. He also mentioned that just as they answered Libya and Karabakh, they can answer the state of Israel as well, and nothing stops them from doing so. This is a very strong message from the president of Turkey, Erdogan, and this is a very big round of escalation between Israel and Turkey. And the question is, what the United States of America is going to do with this, because Turkey is a part of NATO and Israel is not. But we see that, and we understand that most likely if something happens, the United States of America will back the state of Israel without any doubts. But at the same time, maybe the European countries will back the state of Turkey. So this is the situation by the morning of the 14th of April, and today we will receive even more. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds us that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.